pledge. Will you bow with me, please? Heavenly Father, we again thank you for this day and the beauty of the seasons, Heavenly Father, and the beauty of the days you've been giving us. And we thank you so very much for those, Heavenly Father. We don't take them for granted. You indeed bless us with them. We pray that you'll be with us here tonight in our meeting, Heavenly Father. Be with our decisions, and may we make the sound and just decisions. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Call a roll, please, ma'am.
Rhonda Allen. Richie Boland. Veronica Buchanan. Gary Farley. Will Jordan. Mike Cush. Jeff Phillips. Steve Sandlin. Mike Vaught. Vincent Windrow. Craig Lynch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. I'll entertain a motion on the amendment of our minutes. And a second. Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Don't believe David's with us tonight. Anything withdrawn or deferred?
No, sir.
Submitted for final approval, minor final plat, re-subdivision of Lot 44, Crescent Cove, and future development area, Harrison Glen. Okay,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, this is a re-subdivision of Lot 44 of the Crescent Cove and a future development area of Harrison Glen. This is a pretty straightforward subdivision. They're basically where Lot 44 and 45 were was one large lot. They're creating two lots out of that, and as you see on the plat, Lot 132, the future development area for Harrison Glen, some of the lot lines were adjusted in that area. The only reason this is having to come before you is because it's a three-lot plat. If it was two lots, we could have handled this administratively. We did the review, we sent the comments to the engineer. He's made the revisions we've asked for, and with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Here?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, it's in my commission district, and I make a motion to approve it.
All right, have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. Reclassification request, Kelly Helton rezoning and conditional use permit. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant is proposing to build a 96,026 square feet sportsplex. So the sportsplex is going to contain two separate ice rinks and an indoor all-purpose field. The property is located along Barfield Crescent Road. Excuse me. As you can see, the property on the screen and behind me and in front of you, there is a single-family home on the property, as well as on the adjacent track. It's pretty much vacant. You can see from the photograph that it's adjacent immediately to the Southridge subdivision, and it's immediately across the street from the Barfield Park. Hours of operation, I've passed out a little there's some information in the staff comments about it, but I've also passed out a little handout regarding the hours of operation, as well as some of the programs that they're proposing to have at the facility. There have been two neighborhood meetings held by the applicant at Barfield Park. The first one was in September of 2009. Several members of the immediate vicinity were in attendance from the neighborhood. A lot of the concerns had to do with the location of the entrance, the hours of operation, the location of the building, and the parking near the property lines. In response to the concerns, the applicant did move the entrance to the opposite side of the property and reduce the amount of parking to able to increase the setbacks. There is actually a copy of the revised plan in your agenda packets, again, for your review. They had a second neighborhood meeting in March, just last month. Again, there were still some concerns about the screening and the lighting. Now, since then, we've passed some new landscaping regulations, so they're going to be required to put some more screening than would normally have been required. There was also some talk about an 8-foot fence on the east side of the property to help with increase with the buffer yard. On the north side, you can see on the photo that there's a large grove of trees right there. Of course, we would encourage the applicant to be able to conserve as many of those as they possibly could, and they can use those as credits for the screening that they would be required to have. The applicant is asking for the C3 zoning, which is our recreational commercial zoning. We don't see that too terribly often. But we did see it, if you remember on Baker Road, there was a basketball training facility that was approved about a year or so ago. That was the same zoning that they had applied for, and we feel that this really falls within that particular district. The setbacks for C3 are a little different, a little more rigid than they are for just a general commercial. 70 feet in the front, 50 for the rear and the sides. This will impact the building just a little bit. The applicant has been made aware of that. Again, the buffering requirements. One of the other issues that we had with this is the existing the parking requirement within the zoning resolution. Really, we don't have anything in our zoning that specifically calls this type of facility out. Really, the closest thing that we have is what is called a commercial indoor amusement or indoor commercial amusement. The parking requirement for that is 1 for each 100 square feet of floor area, plus 1 for each 4 seats. Using that calculation, this type of business would require over 1,000 parking spaces. As staff, we think that that's just a very large amount of parking and probably not necessary to have that much. After reviewing the parking requirements and other jurisdictions, we feel more comfortable with the parking requirement based on capacity as opposed to floor area. Since none of the uses in Chart 3 are really tailored to this type of use, we think, again, that particular qualification for that using the capacity would be better, and would recommend that as possibly as a condition of approval. With that, let me just kind of go through this is a copy of the plan right through here. Originally, let's see if this pointer works here. There we go. Originally, they were showing the entrance over here. After discussion with the neighbors, the entrance was actually brought over here, as you see in this area. This area through here has to be reserved for their soils area as well as the detention area. The applicant did talk about using bioswales in the development of the parking lot as well as porous concrete to help with drainage. Again, this is Southward subdivision over here. Barfield School is just a little bit over here, and across the street you have Barfield Park. Just some of the pictures. This is looking directly into the site. This is looking down Barfield Crescent Road. You can see in this area it's five lane already. You can see the left turn lane on that picture right through here. Yeah, it's actually right about here, and that's the entrance to Barfield Park, I believe, right there. Better look at that entrance, looking directly across the street into the park. Looking back down Barfield Crescent Road toward the subdivision. Again, looking into the property. This is actually a shot from the Southward subdivision of the back of the property that we're looking at. You can see the heavy amount of trees that are there right now. With that, the applicant is present as well as several of their representatives. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, question? Yes, ma'am.
The plan that we approved once before, where it was the basketball facility, do you remember what the hours were for that one?
Ms. Allen, I don't. I apologize. I don't believe it was as late as what they're proposing here, but off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly. I'm sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Doug, I just wanted to, I didn't hear about the parking. How many spaces did you come up with?
Well, if you were to use the calculation to the only thing that makes any sense in the zoning resolution for this type of facility, you'd be looking at over 1,000 parking spots. What they're proposing on the plan is about 270, I believe.
Staff was okay with that?
We're a lot more comfortable with that, just because, I mean, obviously, even with all 10 acres paved, I don't think you could get 1,000 parking spots. There's also, and the applicant maybe will speak to this, they had talked about the possibility of talking with the city about using actually Barfield Park as some possible overflow area. That's something they'll have to work out and with them. Now, that's something our zoning resolution does allow for shared parking, off-site parking under certain circumstances, and this, I think, would qualify for that.
This is combining 2 lots into one?
Yes.
And the existing residence will be raised?
Yes.
Okay.
Doug, on the plat it showed the buildings to the back of the property, and that blue line that's on this overhead now shows, I don't know if that's accurate or not, shows the property. Is the property line the tree line, or does it go back to the clear property? Because if that's correct, those trees will be totally gone.
Yeah, the blue line that you're looking at is the property line. Let me pull the plan back up.
So just on that overhead look, if those buildings are all the way at the back, all that buffer is totally wiped out back there.
There we go. If,
And so,
Yeah, well,
if they
if-
could leave 75 feet of trees, that would be great, if there are trees, but if the property line's back in a clearing, there are no trees to leave.
mhm.
And
The-
I'm
the-
just
right,
thinking about those
the
houses
blue line
back there,
was
how
the-
much they
was
could
the-
actually see the buildings.
Yeah, the blue line is where the property line is, right there. Now, this plan right here that we're looking at, I believe shows, if I remember correctly, it shows 40 foot on the back. They would need to leave at least 50 for the setback, so the building's going to have to be shifted up just a little bit. So now, and that was a discussion, quite a bit of discussion about the screening and the buffering at the neighborhood meetings, about trying to leave the amount of trees as possible. I mean, I realize a lot of the parking area is probably going to take up some of those trees, if not most of the trees. That was why a lot of the discussion was on, the buffering on that east side especially, and then on north side where the existing houses are. On the other side, of course, I mean, there is a small amount of development, not like a subdivision, but larger tract. But there's a good amount of trees buffering it already on the adjacent property. Now, they still have to add some on their side, but the biggest concern was on that east and that north property line.
Gary?
To answer part of that question there, in the neighborhood meeting on the two we had, and the developer also agreed that they would, keep a lot of those trees. I think it was a 40-foot, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
Was it a 40-foot
For the buffer area?
for the buffer area?
They would be at least required a 30-foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, because there was some discussion about, they're actually going to put a vinyl fence, 8-foot vinyl fence along the southwest side there, and there was talk about putting a fence there, and they said that they had rather, and the neighbors had rather them have the existing trees instead of just taking all those trees down. So, from what I gathered from the developer, they're willing to keep a number of those trees in there to buffer that area for the neighbors. They can address that here in a little bit.
Rich?
Doug, how will you handle the traffic? I noticed the turn lane going into the ball field would be a left-hand turn going out, and yet, how will the people get in coming from Barfield?
Well, that section of Barfield Crescent Road right there is already a 5-lane road, so I don't think any further improvements would really be needed. I don't think it's so necessarily the traffic coming that would possibly have an issue. It might be as it's leaving, because I imagine people are going to get there, at varying times before an event begins. I think your greater impact's going to be when people are leaving, but with that turn lane already installed, the center lane, continuous center lane. Right. Now, that's something I think would be required here, and would be a good idea to coordinate with the city. This is a city road. They might, and actually, we've had some conversations with the city planning staff on this particular development. Their request is for us to, whenever a site plan is officially submitted, for them to take a look at it just from a traffic and drainage standpoint, make sure nothing is going to get in the way of the right-of-way. But we'll coordinate with them to make sure that the striping is adequate and safe for both developments.
Okay, any other questions before we open it up to public hearing?
Doug, I didn't hear you say it, and you may have. If you did, I apologize. But the 8-foot vinyl fence, did you talk about it?
I think I mentioned the 8-foot fence. I didn't get into the vinyl part of it. On our conditions, we actually do list the 8-foot fence. Now, we didn't go into material, but we did say an 8-foot fence shall be constructed on the east side of the property. So that is one of the conditions that we put on there.
Steve?
Doug, the required parking, is this adequately comply with our parking, what we need for a facility this size?
Again, really the closest thing we have that even remotely describes this type of facility would require about 1,000 parking spaces. They're showing about 270 right around in there. I think 1,000 parking spaces is probably way more than they'll really ever need, honestly. I don't think that, and the applicant may be able to speak a little bit further to that.
Well, I know you mentioned that they talked with or they're in the process of talking with the city, I guess, in Barfield.
I don't know if they've actually had the conversations at this point. That is something that they have indicated a willingness to do. Again, they can speak to that.
I can't see people crossing that 5-lane traffic to park, and where the parking lot is now, unless they do some kind of other parking and a thing over or something. I
see that, but if it's meeting the requirements here, then I think we're okay, but
Yeah, well, again, without having something that's just exactly like that, it's difficult to say. Now, we did research several communities around us that have these type of facilities, and they typically go more with a maximum capacity number of people who are going to be in attendance as opposed to the actual square footage of the facility. I mean, when you look at the floor plan of the facility, there's not a lot of seating there, and the rinks are, I mean, they're regulation rinks that you'll be looking at. So, I mean, while there'll be times, I'm sure, for tournaments, well, they'll need a good amount of that park. I don't think they would ever need 1,000 spaces. So.
Well, I went to a facility very similar to this in Franklin, and we went over there for a volleyball tournament, and they had 2 ice rinks in there, and then they had all the basketball and volleyball and all that stuff going on, and laser tag. They had all kinds of stuff going on in there, and I mean, they had parking just. I mean, that was tournament time, but a lot of these facilities do hold tournaments, which brings in the dollars and revenue, and of course we welcome that, but we want to make sure everybody's in a safe manner. Period.
Right,
So,
obviously, and we don't want to see people parking on Barfield Crescent Road or anything like
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah, that's not something we want to see either. So.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll open it up to a public hearing. Would the applicant wish to speak?
Hello, Commission members. I'm David Alcorn, and representing the owner and the applicant here, and they're both here tonight. And just to reiterate what the facility is, called Middle Tennessee Sportsplex, and it is a multi-sport facility housing several different things: ice hockey, inline hockey, indoor soccer, flag football, lacrosse, deck hockey. Also will be public skating, figure skating, party room rentals, pro shop, concession stand housed inside the facility. Also be used for public and private use. I think mentioned tournaments like the facility you're familiar with in Franklin. There will be weekend tournaments, and of course a lot of those could also be bringing in some busing where maybe buses would park across if the room's needed. But really, with everything going on, there could be a lot of activity, but we're thinking that the parking that has set up would be adequate to house what their intention is. This will be a facility also used by MTSU for a lot of their training, and then a lot of the leagues, local leagues and such like that. We don't have that right now. You have to travel to Franklin or into Nashville Centennial. Now the facility that they're going to build and the type of floor that they're going to do is going to be top of the line, even better than what those other 2 facilities currently have, and something that the Chamber of Commerce is actually excited about just because of what it will bring to the community as far as tournaments. This is a sport that is attractive to many people, and will bring a lot of out-of-town overnight weekend type tournaments and such. But both the applicant is here, and I think an engineer with him is here if you have any questions. But any questions for me?
Do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against?
Good evening. My name is Phil Scarce, and I'm pretty excited about this new facility. I'm a former player, parent of an ice hockey player, and past president of the Siegel High School Ice Hockey Club. I've also coached hockey, and I know that this will be an excellent addition to our city. And as you've heard today, youth who are involved in skating or in ice hockey have to travel to Nashville, to the Centennial Sportsplex, or to the rink in Cool Springs. And of course that costs time and it costs money, and that's money that could stay right here in our town. I think the new facility will help kids learn to skate, learn to play a new sport, and it'll give them a safe place to be active. So I think it'll be a big plus for the city, and I hope that you will approve the reclassification request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak before we close the public hearing? Could the applicant, do you have a question for the applicant? Would the applicant come forward, please? Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
Hello.
I'm not familiar with ice hockey as a sport, so I'm just curious, can you explain to me why you need midnight times throughout the week? Because that just seems incredibly late to me for the type of people who I would anticipate using this facility.
Well, you're looking at league play. League plays, you know, people getting out of work 5:30 to 6, so you can't start games until 6:30, 6:45. Yes, these are adults. A lot of the kids will be playing on the weekend, Saturday morning, etc. And then the adults leagues, they start 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30. And the reason why we've got it until midnight is because obviously our last game will start 9:30, 10 o'clock. That'll give them an hour and a half to play their game, and they'll get out of there. Of course, there'll be employees in there up until midnight. But after that, it's not going to be like there's, you know, still people arriving, still games going on. So that's why we need the late hours, because it's very imperative for the leagues. If we don't have those time slots, we can't fill those leagues, because people will not play at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock. The time is very imperative to have that.
What kind of traffic do you anticipate for those later games? Like, let's say when a game dismisses at 11:30 or 12, how many people are you talking about coming out of there at that time of night?
Well, you're looking at about 15 to 18 on a roster. So I'd imagine you're probably looking at 70 people maybe. You know, if there's games going on in both ice and inline, and then you're going to have some people playing on the turf. So I'd imagine 70, 75 people. I mean, it's not going to be like 200 or 300 where there's, 80 cars flying in and out of there. So I don't envision that being a problem.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Steve.
Have you been in this business before? I mean, you've done this business. You know what this business is, and this is why you're opening up your own, or is it just? I mean, you already know some of the problems, some of the bugs you're going to have to work out, and things like that, or is this all brand new to you? Or?
Well, I've been involved in running and developing leagues since I was about 18, back home in Indiana. So I know a lot about running leagues, what it takes to manage leagues, so on and so forth. And in my experience, I've managed plenty of people to know what it takes to run a facility like this. And of course, yes, it has always been a dream of mine to own a facility like this, because I'm a sports guy. I'm all about hockey, inline hockey, soccer, whatever it may be. And I think it's very important for this community, as these young kids start to grow, have a facility like this. So that's kind of been my thing, is I live in the community, and I think it'd be great, and that's what I want to do.
Well, I think it's a great plan for sure. I'm just wanting to make sure. I think one of my main things, I think it's a great location right across from this park, so a lot of people are already coming in through there through the summer, and this will be a great events for all throughout the whole year, basically. But you don't have any court type stuff as far as basketball or anything. I got your list here, or this is a list that was handed to me, and your hours. But there's not. I mean, I don't know how you play dodgeball. You're not going to play dodgeball on ice, so you're going to play dodgeball somewhere else.
Well, you can play dodgeball on the turf. It's going to be a turf field. It's
okay.
going to be. It's going to have. You can have flag football and lacrosse and soccer. A wide variety of sports can be played on that same turf.
This is still inside.
Yes.
All this is inside.
All this is inside. Correct.
Okay. So the noise factor that we may hear from another public hearing or something is not going to be a noise factor.
No.
Because everybody's going to be inside.
That's correct. And my engineers have assured me with the building that they're going to use and the insulation type that none of these people around this area are going to hear, hockey pucks or soccer balls or whatever may be hitting walls or disturbing them, or loud noises, anything like that from what's going on inside.
What about the lighting, as far as these folks here and the concerns there that I feel like that will be there? I'm very surprised we didn't have the whole courtroom packed, with people either for it or against it or something. And we may later on. But the lighting for the parking and all that, is it just going to be pretty minimal and or is it going to look like Walmart when you come out here and it's going to bother these residents that are out here? Because we're looking regular. This is R15 zone. We're having to change everything, especially for this type use. So I mean, the ballparks are. Had to go through a great deal on that, and maybe it's okay. I'm just. Maybe that's
No.
why nobody's here. It's okay.
Yeah, with the builders and engineers, what they're telling me is we're gonna have a lighting system that's gonna be focused downward. That way, when you pull into the parking lot, you don't see these huge lights like you're pulling up at a football stadium or something like that. So the lights are gonna be focused downward so that it'll strictly be on the parking lot. They're not gonna fly out into people's windows or anything like that.
If I could interject something as well, that was one of the topics too that came up at the neighborhood meeting, that had quite a bit of discussion is about the lighting and how that would impact the neighbors.
Gary?
I just want to answer some of Steve's questions and concerns he had. One of the reasons that I think I actually had the developer and the realtor to have 2 neighborhood meetings. That was a requirement that I had because of the concerns that I knew that some of the people in the subdivision there would have. A lot of the same questions: noise, lighting, sound, traffic, all those things have come up in those 2 meetings. And, a lot of times people have the fear of the unknown. And that's why I wanted the meetings. And then once they actually went back after the first meeting and they made some concessions and changes on their proposal, like moving the road down away from the subdivision and backing up to the people. And once they made those changes, I wanted them to have another one so they could actually present to the people out there. And then actually there were some more people that actually came to the second meeting that wasn't at the first meeting. And I think some of the people there didn't want it. They understood, but they understood the possibility of across the street. You've got this whole recreational area. They know that they're asking for recreation here, and they know that what the possibilities could be. And like one guy's told me out there that night, he said, "I'd rather have this than I had a McDonald's." And tonight, when this is all said and done, there are some things that I want to make sure that we go through and make that are in that conditions, and for those people out there in that subdivision. So I just want to let you know what.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, this gentleman? One more question.
This is for Doug. Doug, do we have any existing plans for out there? Already approved plans?
Are you talking land use plans or
Yes.
something like that? Not that I'm aware of, no, sir. Now, we are in the process of doing our comprehensive plan, which will take into account the entire unincorporated area of the county. But really, the closest plan to this would have been the Salem plan, and it didn't quite come this far over for that.
But in terms of what we have already approved, this doesn't interfere with them.
Well, this area of the city right through here is actually kind of there's portions of it that are in the city and portions that are in the county. Of course, the subdivision immediately adjacent to it is a county subdivision. Of course, directly across the street is Barfield Park. That is in the city of Murfreesboro. If you go a little bit further to the east, you hit Barfield Elementary School. Again, that's in the city. Really, once you pass the subdivision, most of everything on both sides of the road is in the city. Besides subdivisions, I don't really. There was a conditional use permit at this house. I think he had a small, like a welding or type business, something to that effect there, if I remember correctly. But besides that, there's just county-wise, besides subdivisions, not a whole lot of development to speak of right through there. However, with the park directly across the street, I don't think that this is incompatible with that, especially that, and then with the school just a little bit further down the road. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, you get a question?
Can you put the plan back
Yeah.
up where we can look at it?
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? We're going to close the public hearing. Carrie.
Like I said previously, there's been 2 and 3 hour long community meetings, and I want to thank Doug for coming out after hours and meeting with my constituents. And and answer some of their questions as well and some of their concerns. Like I said previously, they had the road was moved at the request of the South Ridge subdivision along the side of it there, and along Couples Court back there. They've actually moved the setbacks back to help where they can actually save some of those trees. Is that correct, Doug?
Yes. I mean, I think, like I said, the plan shows a 40-foot right now on there, but it has to be 50, so they're going to have to move that building just a little bit further up and a little bit further over to the east to meet setbacks. But yeah, they're going to try to do as much as they can to save the trees that need to be saved.
So in the back where Couples Court's at, and then on the right rear corner there where there's more trees, they're going to have to go back and do what now?
The rear setback, just in general in this district, is 50 feet. Okay, so the building's going to have to be at least that far from the property line. They'd be required, without any kind of fencing or anything, to have a 30-foot buffer. So they'll have to be able to. Now they can reduce that a little bit if they decide to put a fence. But I think what the developer was what they wanting to do was try to save as many trees as they could, because they could use that as credit toward their buffering requirements.
It'd be cheaper than the trees than it would be to build a fence.
Exactly.
Okay. So they're going to go back and change that a little bit on that part.
Right, and yeah, when they if this is approved, ultimately, recommended here, approved, and then by the Board of Commissioners approved, they'll have to come back through with an engineered site plan at that point, which will look at all the drainage, parking. We'll look at
that will
everything.
Come back at a later time.
Right. This will come back to this body for a site plan review.
And I know that. I just want to make sure that the public knows what's going on. And also in the conditions, if you would. The 8-foot vinyl fence.
Mm-hmm. So you want it specifically vinyl?
Right.
Okay.
Because I know a wood on their part and on the citizens' part, a wood fence will be falling down and not doing as well. But the lights shining downward, that's going to be
that's in there. Plan. That's in there. Yeah, and that's in their conditions.
That's in the conditions.
Sure.
Okay. And buffering with existing trees in the rear, that's all with a 30-foot.
Right, and that you don't need to make that a condition as far as the buffering requirements, because that's what's required anyway. Okay. So they'd be required to do that regardless. With
and in the conditions, out of both meetings, all those conditions that the citizens out there had asked for are in the conditions right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe they are. Let me just read to you the ones we've got. The dumpster enclosure will be constructed of opaque material to match the building materials, be outfitted with solid gates and screened with landscaping, and the on-site lighting will be required to have no more than 1-foot candle at the property line, so we'll want to see a lighting plan to verify that. Box design lighting fixtures shall be required that points the light downward on the property. Parking, of course, we talked about the parking already, and then the 8-foot, and I'll add in vinyl fence, shall be constructed along the east side of the property line. This fence may be counted towards part of the buffer yard requirements. That's what we have in there.
Okay. And the reason for the 8-foot fence, it actually talks about a 6-foot fence, and the citizens out there wanted an 8-foot where they wouldn't have to sit in their backyard, and maybe because it was on an elevation out there, and the developer was willing to go along with the 2 more feet on that as well.
And I will say that we do have fence design guidelines that they'll have to abide by regardless. So, as far as, construction and just various things like that. So, yeah, okay. that should complement that well.
All right. With all that, then, after making sure that all that stuff's in there, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the request with the conditions set forth.
Do I have a second? Steve seconds it. All for the motion. Do you have a question?
I didn't know we were quite ready for a motion, but I just got a comment. I can appreciate the neighbors wanting the driveway moved to the left side of the property, but I want to know how far it is from that entrance to the entrance at Barfield Crescent, because most of your traffic is going to be coming and going from South Church Street. And if you've got a ball team, a tournament, you've got 4 or 5 cars waiting to turn left into the ball field, the baseball field, there's going to be no way to get out of this thing. That's pretty close point of conflict right there, it looks to me like. And I'd like to see the driveway farther down and maybe make an immediate left and come up the property line. But if you've got 3 cars waiting to turn into Barfield Crescent Park, there's going to be no way to get out of this development because they're pretty close together right there, are they not?
Yeah, looking at the plan, of course, we got the aerial, and we have this. The location of the proposed drive is probably just about, I'd say, where the existing drive is to the, right
Yeah.
around here.
Well, there's not a lot of
Property.
distance between there and up to Barfield
Looking at
Crescent.
that, just looking at, you're probably talking about an inch is 250 feet on the scale on that map. Now it's hard to scale. I would say it's probably about 250, 300 feet between those
Well,
two
300 feet's a
entrances.
pretty good stacking distance. It looked to me like it's closer than that, but I just had a little bit of concern. You know, what little bit I've been taught is to separate points of conflict as much as possible, and
What,
I just wonder if we could move it down and make them turn and go up. But I mean, if you think it's far enough, I'm fine with it. I'll support the motion, but I hate to see 3 years from now all this is out there and there's a tournament at Barfield Crescent, and the people can't get out of here because there's cars backed up trying to turn in the park. And
Let me suggest this. The city's expressed some concern about the drainage and the traffic regarding this. What we can do between this meeting and the next for the Board of Commissioners, we can sit down with the applicant and meet with city officials to see what they would recommend as far as distance requirements between the two entrances. They may be okay with what's there, and we can come back with a report on that at the Board of Commissioners meeting.
Okay? Have a motion, have a second. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Gary, thank you for having 2 meetings. Okay. Borrow pit regulations. This comes before the county commission, what night?
You think by now I'd actually have that date memorized.
They know.
That would be May the 13th.
May the 13th, back to county commission.
And there'll be an advertisement in the paper regarding that, probably next week or so. We'll put that in.
Tell them, Gary. Bar pit regulations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We had a work session on these regulations at the last daytime planning commission meeting back in March. Just as a little background, this is something that the Board of Zoning Appeals handles. We just call them resource extraction. However, most of the extraction operations we look at are not your larger operations like rock quarries and that kind of thing. They're really more your just your one lot, large acreage tract kind of development, where they're looking to dig a pond or to move some rock off site for a project or something like that. And we really don't have regulations per se that that consistently regulate those type of operations. So what staff did was kind of looked at several communities around us to see what kind of regulations they had, and came up with what we have before you tonight. The last meeting, there were several comments and discussion about how we regulate these and several changes that were recommended. One of those, under number 3, talking about the amount of area that a borrow pit can cover, we did amend that. We had something in there, say for acres of sites of 10 acres or more, they would be limited to 10%. However, under that was 25%, so there was a little disconnect there between the 2.5 acres, which someone would be allowed if they had just under 10 acres as opposed to just 1 acre if they had 10. So what we did was we changed that to say no more than 10% of any lot area over 10 acres or 2.5 acres, whichever was greater, to take care of that. There was also a lot of discussion about the times for blasting, what time blasting could be accomplished, and also excavation. 9 and 10, we addressed that. No blasting in association with borrow pit operation shall take place on any portion of any property, except between the following hours, August 1st through May 31st. We said 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then the summer months, June 1st through July 31st, we said 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then number 10, we changed the excavation, excluding blasting and hauling of materials, limited to the hours between sunrise and sunset. I believe that's how we left that at the last Planning Commission meeting. Everything else that we have here is pretty much the same as we had last month. We just need to have a public hearing on this, and if we need to have more study, that certainly is fine. We can do that, but I'll be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Okay. We will open it up to a public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak for this, for or against? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Okay. Let's come back to us. Okay, Karen.
For a farmer, I've got some of my areas in my commission district is farmland. For a farmer to dig a pond and want to, help move some of that dirt to help pay for the pond. They're going to have on a county road, they'll have to bond that road for a road bond. Is that correct?
That is correct, and actually that hasn't changed even with these regulations. When it comes to resource extraction, we really don't differentiate between agricultural use and non-agricultural use. If they're going to be moving dirt or material off-site, they're required to get a conditional use permit from the BZA. So this regulation kind of just codifies that. So that really is not a change from what we already do.
Item 6 right here, a reclamation plan shall be submitted to and approved by the county engineer prior to the commencement of excavation activities. Is that a pond? Is that?
Yeah, we still require them. I work with them. I don't require an engineering plan for a pond, but what we've got some places in the county where people will come in and say they were going to dig a pond, and then later on after the dirt's gone on, we go out and we find it's more like a moonscape. They're not really, or maybe they didn't follow through or they ran out of money, whatever. Once you excavate the pond, we try to get them to work with it was a soil conservation service, I forget the, but anyway, because you either line it with bentonite clay or something so that your water stays in there and that kind of stuff. So we have them put together a reclamation pond so we don't have just a bunch of areas out there that are dug up and left and leaves, in some cases, safety problems, and in other cases, it just looks bad.
Okay, you work with the agricultural thing is what's got us all in a problem here with this. If they do want to dig a pond, if they want to go through that procedure, the reclamation plan, if it's truly agriculture, you can tell if it's agriculture.
That's correct.
And you'll be able to help them with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll go out on
you
site
won't have
with
to
them.
get an engineer to come up with the reclamation plan, and also you won't have to get an engineer. Think of the drainage and erosion control plan. I mean, you'll have to work with that.
That's correct.
It's agricultural. Yeah, Gary.
So by doing that, and you able to work with the farmer, we can work around those type of things instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is
The
that what I'm hearing?
only time we're requiring an engineer plan is if it's a commercial operation. Even if it's commercial, but the farmer says he just wants to make a 2-acre pond and he wants to sell that dirt, which would be a commercial, I'll still work with him on that. And then we go out and do a final inspection and on their property.
As long as it's agricultural and we know that it's going to be worked with, I think I think that just tastes a little bit better for everyone. The road bond, does Mike Williams not get involved in that, or do you?
Well, the spreadsheet we use on the road bond, we've worked with Mike for the prices and stuff. We just put in distances and stuff in the spreadsheet. In a couple of cases, there was a couple of bridges involved. We went to Mike and he said, "Don't worry about the bridge," and so we didn't bond the bridge. But
so if it's state road.
If it gets to a state road, of course, we can't bond a state road, and so that's just how far we just bond on the county road till they get to where they're going, or till they come to a state road. After that, there's no bond for that.
Okay, Gary. Does anyone else have questions? Any other questions? Like we trust Dale, that he's going to do what he said he was going to do, but how to, yeah. The next Dale.
If you want, what we could do is if you want us to propose a little wording to you, we could just defer it at this meeting. We've had the public hearing. We could just defer it until the day meeting, basically, and then you could just, if you're comfortable with the language, then you could just we could just approve it at that point. That would still give us time for advertising for the county commission.
Okay. Yeah.
Rather than just try to come up with some wording on the fly. And like I said, this isn't something that's just critical. This is something we know that needs to be dealt with. It wasn't something that we just had to have dealt with today, but just because we don't have a lot of applications for these coming in, we figured while we had a little lull in the action, we could kind of look at this and get some regulations in place. But I think, putting us off until the day meeting just for us to craft a little language for that,
I do think the agricultural community will, as long as do what Dale said, I think they'll be okay.
Well, and I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think with what Dale had just spoke of, I think that will benefit the agricultural community. It's going, and then by going out here and us passing this, it's going to benefit the citizens out there and get some of the problems we're having through the planning department. And I do think that Rich is right. We need to put something in there. God forbid we don't have the planning staff we've got now. Something needs to be wrote down there, that guidelines where it will take care of the situations as they arise. It's something in writing, and so we won't 10 years from now we're not thinking, scratching our head and trying to ask Mr. McQuarrie over here, was this is the intent of this or intent of that? We've got it in writing. We know what it is, and it is what it is.
Okay. Do I have a motion to defer it till next month? Good.
I'll make a motion to defer this to let them come up with some verbiage, but I would urge them to talk to the county attorney and make sure that it's something that is legal, because 26 years ago or whenever, that's how the Stoneman Rock Quarry came in to start with, through some wording that was for agricultural quarrying. And so we want to be careful. I am a farmer. I want to see as much leniency for agriculture as possible, but I don't want to leave a door open for somebody to come in, or we don't want to be discriminatory where we have ourselves open to a lawsuit. So I'd encourage you to work with Josh and make sure whatever wording is.
Right.
And with that, I got a motion to defer.
Okay. Mike?
I don't know how to word this, but there seems to be a lot of worry about whether it's, in the future, whether we'll know whether it's agriculture or not. With that being said, you might put something in there, and this is up to you, Doug, but you might put something in there that if it's an approved project by the local USDA soil conservationist, then it should meet county specs. I mean, it should be approved by the county. Not necessarily that it will, but it should. So that would give a farmer, you could go to the soil conservationist right now, bring the plans up here, and they signed off on it. They're working with me on it.
Yeah, all your slopes on your dams and all that.
Yeah, I don't see that changing, long term.
No.
They've been there 50 years, so they're
we'll look at that too. Yeah, as part of what we're looking at.
You second
for our
that
next
motion?
meeting, I think.
Okay. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, Doug.
Just a real quick report. Just want to let you know the comprehensive plan is moving forward. They have looking at the alternative growth scenarios at this time. We had a very productive meeting last month regarding looking at some future growth scenarios, and they've got that. And we're looking at this point at probably another steering committee meeting in early May. I sent out an email to the committee today for May 3rd. I'm getting good response on that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use CUD. That's already booked on that date, but I'm sure we can come up with some other locations, or if we need to shift the date, that's a possibility too. But early May is what we're looking at this point. But things are going well. We're still on. We feel we're still on track with things. So just stay tuned.
Yeah.
Just one quickly. We're currently in the process of pulling one of the bonds on one of our subdivisions because the developer apparently is going to go bankrupt. Most of the work is done, but it's not up to snuff yet, so that the highway department can take them over. I just bring this up to let you know that the economy is starting to hit us in that area, and that you may hear something about it if you just give us a call at the office. We'll let you know about it.
Okay.
Can you tell us what the subdivision is?
Yeah, there's two sections in Fall Creek, out off J.D. Todd Road out there, that the developer's going to be unable to finish. He's got, his stone down in his first coat. He doesn't have a top coat and some shoulder stone and a couple other things that have to be done. So what we're going to do is we'll pull the letter of credit, and then we'll put out some specs and put it out for bid, and we should be able to get some pretty good price with contractors right now to finish up the work.
Is there any homes, existing homes now that people live in out there in that subdivision?
Yeah, almost all the lots are sold. Almost all the houses are built, people living in them.
Okay.
Okay? So,
That's all I have.
anyone else? Entertain a motion. Where'd that come from? They have a second. All right, we need to sign this, right?